kind of the joke is you ask your accountant, what should I be doing? They say, come in next year and I'll tell you what you should have done, right? So we need someone who's looking forward, looking at the legal side and the tax strategy side. So I want to welcome to the stage Legally Minded.
Because there's two things in life that are certainties. Ben Franklin, all-time classic quote here, death and taxes. And I'm just going to add in there that if you are a dentist or you live in the United States of America, frankly, lawsuits, it's like a third certainty these days. But I want to talk about all three of them. Let's talk about death for a second. This is going to be our indigestion part of the day, and we're going to get through it quickly. Bear with me. If you don't want to chew during this time, it's okay. It'll only last for about 1.5 minutes. Death. 67% of people in the United States are dying right now without a valid estate plan. What this means is that your family goes into probate, and 30, 40 to 50% of everything that you have goes to the state or to an attorney. That's what that means. Is that how you want to leave your family? This one's personal for me, guys. My father died. He was a practice owner, and he died at 54 years old. If you think that my family thought that's what was going to go down and that was the big life plan, you got another thing coming. There's some things you control in life, and one of them is when the big ticking time stops. You don't control that thing. You think you might. You do not. We got to take care of this one. It's a certainty, and so we just wait around for it like there's nothing we can do about it. But the preparations you can make not only are going to help you and your family, but the proactive nature of those preparations are going to allow you to keep a lot of money in your pocket, because we're going to show you some tax strategies around estate planning that are going to be awesome for you right now. Taxes. 73% of all Americans overpay their taxes. This is my favorite. Do you know where that quote comes from, or that statistic? The IRS. So they know it happens, but they don't care, because it's your responsibility not to do that. So if you don't like it, stop doing it, they said. Do you know that right now the average American pays 30 to 40% in income taxes? Here's my favorite part. Do you know that we pay taxes when we buy things, when we use things, when we sell things, and even if we don't have things? It's a fascination, really. 30 to 42%. 30 to 42%. So let me just tell you, the problem with trying to out-revenue that number, guys, is that it grows. I want you to look, when we make more income, we don't just pay more taxes because we made more income. We pay a higher percentage of taxes, and this is a critical thing to understand, because when you do that, you can't outwork it. If you make more, you pay more, and you get to the point where you can make an 8% annualized business growth and not take a penny more home. So if you don't think that this is a piece of your strategy you need to start paying attention to, you're going to work harder and make less. You could work harder, take on more liability, more employees, more marketing, more intention, make more money, and you take home less. There is nothing about that that feels good. You've got to pay attention to taxation, and there is things we can do about that. Now, what about lawsuits? This one's fascinating. There were over 40 million lawsuits in the United States last year, and less than 5% of them were malpractice. I need you guys to know, when we come in here, everybody always says, well, I have insurance. And I say, good for you. I'm not here to talk to you about malpractice. Do you guys know that last year was the first year in history that there were more lawsuits among dentists by employees than patients? Do you know those lawsuits aren't covered by malpractice? They're not coming after your malpractice, they're coming after you. Do you know that anything inside of sexual misconduct is not covered? What could that be? We dealt with a practice owner just a month ago a patient came in and said that their assistant had taken the patient into the room and had fondled them improperly. They were being sued for sexual misconduct. Whose responsibility is that, by the way? You didn't do it, but it's your responsibility because they're your employee. This is called vicarious liability, and you own that. I have a client right now. Her 17-year-old son goes to a party, gets drunk, has sex with his girlfriend. She hadn't told her mom that she was sexually active. So when her mom found out, she said, "It wasn't my choice." This young man who's 17 years old is now being charged for 3 counts of felony rape, and his mom is being sued because she's vicariously liable. How much is the lawsuit for? $1.7 million. Last month, she paid $17,000 to her attorney to defend, to try to keep a hold of what she's made during her career. What I'm talking to you about today, guys, isn't I am a really, really good practicing dentist. I know you are. You wouldn't be sitting in this room if that wasn't the case. I'm not talking to you about that. I'm talking to you about the idea that we have this process where we hire human shields. Oh, I have an accountant, I have an attorney, I have a wealth manager, I have a wealth strategist. Good. To protect what? This big pot of gold you're trying to build. But my advice to you is put a lid on the gold, build a wall, and then move the darn thing so that nobody knows where the target is. Why do we just keep hiring human shields? It's way more expensive. Because I got news for you. When the Army does show up to get your goods, your human shields that you've been paying for all this time, let me tell you what they tell you. They tell you that'll be a few $1,000s per hour. Thank you very much. And by the way, we got to hire more people because we need more bodies to human shield this thing, and even then we're probably going to lose. It's excruciating. I've been through it as a business owner and as a consultant for businesses all over the world, and it's painful. You guys have a few additional liabilities. This is the latest statistics in the dentist space. 82% of you will see a lawsuit. It's not even a question mark anymore. 2,000 sued in a given year. 81,000 is the average out-of-pocket payout. And do you know what that doesn't take into consideration is how much time you lose in your practice that would have been income-producing time for you. And then 500 suits filed against retired docs. Now, why do I tell you this? Am I trying to scare you? No. I'm trying to bring awareness because ignorance is not bliss in this world, not in this one. And what I don't want you to do is make decisions from a point of fear. You know, the average person says they don't build their business because it's almost unsafe. It's safer to be small. It's safer to fly under the radar. I hear it all the time. I'm going to fly under the radar. But I walk down this hallway, you guys got AI technology, you got things coming out that are going to make it so that the people who get on the cutting edge of what is coming are going to be the greatest wealth creators of our generation. But you're going to do that. You need to take care of what's behind the scenes and do it proactively. Don't sit around and wait for it to happen. Take advantage. Do something proactively and go play some offense and then feel good about going and creating something amazing for yourselves. That's what we want to see. So our objective today, we want to take the stress down and we want to get the excitement up. We want you to feel like you have more control over what you're doing so that you keep more of what you make, protect yourself in the process, and really make sure that you feel like you have control over your life and what you're building. And to do that, we're going to go through 4 key strategies today. Well, 5 key strategies, but all of the strategies have to follow the same 4 rules. We need the right owner, the right entity, the right state, and the right verbiage. And I want you guys to remember these 4 rules because everybody's heard of something like an LLC. And then they wonder why it is that when the lawsuit comes, the LLC didn't work. And it's because if it doesn't follow those 4 rules, it doesn't matter if the entity is in place. So these are the 4 rules. Let's get through the strategies. 5 strategies we're going to talk about. Now, really important is that one of the things that I want to point out here is in law, it is as important or more important that you have case law precedent than it is that it's written in the law. Much like dental practice, you can go to school and you can learn about a case. But then when you're sitting there and you got their teeth and their mouth wide open and it's your hands in there, you got to do what the case presents. And it may or may not follow that textbook exactly, but maybe you saw it before. Maybe somebody mentored you on how to deal with that situation. The law is very similar in the sense that the law is written. It then goes into the courtroom. The judge then executes on that law based on his opinion of how to interpret that law. That then creates case law precedent. Case law precedent will be considered at a higher level over the written law 100% of the time. So I don't want to teach you strategies today that are book smart. I want them to have written law and case law precedent. So all of the strategies I'm going to show you today have Supreme Court case law backing, which means that if they ever needed to be used, we know that we have Supreme Court case law backing on them. All right, so what are we protecting? We got to protect assets. There's 2 different types, and it's important we understand them because they cannot be protected the same. We have safe assets and high-risk assets. Now, safe assets aren't what they seem. Safe assets are not safe from lawsuits. They're simply safe from causing a lawsuit. Safe assets are your things like bank accounts and investment accounts and cryptocurrency and artwork and jewelry and things like this. They call them safe because these things aren't jumping off the pages of your bank account, tripping somebody in the street and causing a lawsuit. So they're safe, but they are also the thing people want the very, very most. Now, high-risk assets, on the other hand, are things like your office, your equipment, your employees, to be completely frank. Any piece of new technology that you're using. This is cars, it's toys, it's other properties you have, firearms, boats. You know what should be the top of this list is children. If you've got them, you have 4. They think they're assets. I call them liabilities. I have 4. They're at the tippy top of my list. They have created more liability for me than any of the businesses I have ever operated, for sure. And when you have teenage sons, if you did not understand that joke, you will soon. Bless you. Bless you. I have 3 of them. Strategy number 1 is about our safe assets. We put our safe assets here. Now, this one's really, really important because it is a unique entity type, the family limited partnership. It allows you to structure different than any other entity out there. The family limited partnership is designated to have 2 types of partners, a general partner and a limited partner. The general partner has total control and therefore has to hold 100% of the liability for the organization. Limited partners have no control and therefore no liability whatsoever. What's fascinating is the law does not dictate how much a general partner has to own in order to have that full control. So I can take my safe assets that aren't going to cause lawsuits by themselves, I can stick them in one big pile, and I can put them all in a family limited partnership. Now what's really cool about this is that I can put them in there and I can have some limited partners. Who can those limited partners be? It could be my spouse. It could be my children. Fascinating, because now I could give my children a distribution. And my children could earn up to $14,800 in a distribution without paying taxes. And then I could move those distributions into a bank account that had their card on it. And then when it was time to pay violin lessons or soccer fees or travel fees, they could pay for them themselves. And I could have $14,800 of my children's expenses that I'm not paying taxes on. Novel concept. This is what allows that kind of a tax strategy to start to work without giving you the liability of turning your child into an employee or paying taxes on that child as an employee. Does that make sense to everybody? Really important we understand that. Now, what's really cool about this is people are like, okay, cool idea, but I want to actually control my assets. So if I do this, who's in control? Well, really interesting that the government doesn't have a problem with a management company controlling this. Who can own the management company? Interestingly enough, I can. My name cannot be a limited partner and a general partner. Nadalyn Lewis cannot be a limited partner and a general partner. But fascinatingly enough, Nadalyn Lewis can be a limited partner, and Lewis Financial can be the management company, and I can own that. So my husband and I own Lewis Financial as 50-50 partners, and we are 1% owners as general partners. Then we each have named limited partnership with all 4 of our children. And this financial structure allows us to build wealth, it allows us to tie into our estate plan, and it allows us to mitigate a ton of taxes. Everybody understand that? Okay, that is strategy 1, and it only works for our safe assets because we can put safe assets all in one place because they don't inherently cause lawsuits by themselves. Now, the Supreme Court, the attorneys didn't love this one because it was like, wow, that is deeply protective. And it is literally, by the way, against the law to sue a limited partner. So when you hold your assets as a limited partner, you cannot be sued. It is illegal to sue you for that asset. So the attorneys fought this one, but it went 9-0 in the Supreme Court. So that one's got full Supreme Court backing. Now, we use that for the safe assets, that's strategy 1, but we cannot use that strategy for our high-risk assets because you cannot put high-risk assets all in the same place. And the reason we can't do that is because if we have all of our high-risk assets in one bucket, if something happens to one of them, it happens to all of them. So let me give you an example of this. Let's say, for example, that you had everything in one bucket. Your practice is set up as an entity, and you buy a piece of equipment. If that same practice hires your employees, and that same practice pays your bills, and that same practice holds the lease on your building, and that same practice is it has the bank account that actually captures all the insurance payments that come in and any of the other payments that come in, what are you doing? You're putting all of your liability and, by the way, all of your assets into the same big, beautiful bucket and saying, I just gathered it all up for you. It's nice and contained. Have a good look. Now, we did that because somebody said, but wait a second, that is an LLC. It's a limited liability company. I'm doing that to limit my liability. LLCs work fascinatingly well when we use them properly. A limited liability company limits your liability from something that happens outside the entity from something that happens inside. So if you are set up as an S corporation or limited liability company and you hold your assets there and something happens in your practice, your personal assets could be protected if you had a limited liability in your personal assets. So you could have two separate LLCs. But if something happens in one spot and it's all in one spot, I have really unfortunate news for you, and that is everything is on the table. Now, here's what's been really painful in the medical field, is that there is something called, and we're going to actually teach you a strategy for this, but there's something called piercing the corporate veil. In the medical world, this happens all the time, and especially with dentists, and I want you to understand why. It's because they came in and they said, you can call this Happy Smiles Are Us all day long. But the person came in to see you, doctor. You are the one that puts your hands in their mouth, not Happy Smiles Are Us, LLC. So we're going to pierce the corporate veil and go after the owner. And it's worked. So we're going to teach you a strategy for that. But what you really need to understand is that your assets need to be contained inside LLCs, and you can't put them all in one place. So what this looks like when it's done well is that they're separated. We would take all of your equipment, put that in one place. Buildings would go in one place. Employees would be hired from a separate entity because employees are your highest risk right now. I cannot say that too much. They are your highest risk. You cannot be employing them from the same entity that's owning all of your other assets. It is a crazy amount of liability you're taking on for that. So we put them in their different places. That way, if something does happen inside of one LLC, all of the other entities are protected. So you have risk, but it's limited risk. And the thing about attorneys is they will only go after a certain amount of risk. So I want you to think, what's too much to put in each container? I get that question all the time. How much should I put in each container? And I say, well, you got to think of like the attorney. They're going to take on this case, and they're going to do it on the come. Which means I got to be able to make a certain amount of money to make this worth my time. So I've got to think, how much can I win? And then if it's an asset, I got to liquidate it. And then how much is that worth on the backside? And then if I take 40% of that, is it worth my time and how much I'm about to pay my paralegal? And if that answer to that question is no, there is no lawsuit. Does that make sense? We got to think like them a little bit, right? So let's talk about who uses this properly. Disney, Walmart. Do you guys know that a Walmart parking lot's the most highly liability, litigation-filled landmine on earth? It's painful. Except for you never read about them because they never go through. Do you know why? Because you get to Walmart and some small child that's 3 years old is maneuvering a cart that's built as a weapon of steel against your vehicle, and they ram it right into the backside, and you're like, good glory, I'm going to sue that kid or Walmart for letting him have the cart. And so they go in to have a suit, but here's the problem. Walmart doesn't own the parking lot. There's a company that owns the parking lot. But they don't actually own the parking lot. One company owns the land, but they've leased it back to an asphalt company. And then the carts are owned separately. So what caused the lawsuit? Was it the cart or was it the asphalt? Because we got to figure out who you're suing. But here's the problem. If it's a cart company, they might as well just give you the cart. You can have it. We were going to replace that when it was rusty anyway. If it's the asphalt company, they just give you a pickaxe. I mean, what are you going to get? There's no value. There's why there's no lawsuits. Disney does the same thing. You get some cute little grandma, she goes rides Thunder Mountain Railroad, gets a little overly excited looking for Mickey Mouse, and woo, she hurts her back. She's going to sue them. They never should have let me on this crazy darn ride in the first place. And they go back, they look at the film. What time did you get on? Oh, 3 o'clock. Oh, yeah, we see you. There you are. You got on Goofy Cart number 4. Let's have a look. Who owns Goofy Cart number 4? Goofy Cart number 4, LLC. Your lawsuit is with them. What do they own? Goofy Cart number 4. What in the world is that grandmother going to do with that cart? Worse, the attorney's like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this for that cart. There's no value, therefore there is no lawsuit. This is how people structure against these things to make sure that you're just protected. This is how this works. So that's how we do our high-risk assets, because we have to separate these things. True story here, as I tell you about teenage children, I have a 17-year-old son who chose one day to wrap his car around a pole in the middle of Jack's Tire and Oil right next to a glass wall. Now let's find out, how in the world did a 17-year-old son manage to get his car in the middle of a grass lawn wrapped around a giant pole? I don't know. It's the great unanswered question that when I die, I will ask it first. But it happened. And his car ended up this far away from a giant glass wall and this far away from a mother and 2 children. If we were protected in this situation, but here's what happened. The Jack's Tire and Oil people called us. I handed them off to the attorney. They had a single phone call and there was never a lawsuit. They were in discovery and they dropped it because there was nothing to get. On the other side of this equation, we've had it happen where they went one step further. We had a client of ours who had recently become a client. His 16-year-old daughter got in the car, and she was her first day driving, and she was really excited. And if any of you have teenage daughters, you're going to appreciate this story. She gets all jittery and nervous because she's driving her own car for the very first time, and she goes to hit on the brakes, but she hit the gas, and she rammed right into this woman at a stop sign. So she's freaking out because it's her first day driving, and she's already wrecked the car. And the woman in the car gets out and runs back, and she's checking on her. Honey, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay, but I can't get hold of my dad. She goes, why not? He goes, he's in surgery. And she goes, oh my gosh, your dad's in surgery? She goes, no, he is the surgeon. I know you guys all say that because you know what's happening. What just happened? 3 days later, what happened? They were served with a lawsuit. Why? Because there was money to have, money to get. So I want you to know we have to protect our high-risk assets differently than our safe assets. Family limited partnership for safe, LLCs, organizing containers. This particular client of ours knew his 16-year-old daughter was going to be driving. He had actually asked us to put her little Toyota Corolla in its own LLC. This thing was worth like $9,000, but he put it in its own LLC. Why? Because of who was driving it. High liability. 16-year-old girl. Smartest thing he ever did. The smartest thing we ever did for him. Because guess what happened? As soon as the attorney found out that thing was in its own container of liability, and there was nothing else to get other than that little tercel, dropped it. Walked away. There's nothing to get here. Dropped it. Now, we got to talk about, because if we set up a family limited partnership, we set up LLCs, we got to stop them coming through that whole piercing of the veil. Because if we set up entities and they can just come right through it, that's not helpful, right? So we've got to make sure we protect against that. So how we do that is we leverage a holding company. Now that comes back to one of our 4 rules. Remember, I talked about the 4 rules, and one of them is in the right state. Now this one's kind of an entertaining one, to be completely honest, but we got to put a holding company in there that actually is the owner of the LLCs, so that you are not the owner of the LLCs. The holding company is. Why? So that if they pierce the corporate veil of the LLC, they don't run into you, they run into a holding company. Well, where is that holding company? Well, interestingly enough, 38 states have now given attorneys and judges the right to do at-will dissolution of an entity, meaning 38 states in the United States will just say, if you've decided that you need to dissolve the entity to get to personal assets, you can. You can seize assets, including homes in most states. Florida, Texas, there's like 4 other states that have added to that now, but in all but 6 states in the United States, they can take a home. They can foreclose your personal membership, so you can own an entity, and then they can actually foreclose your membership and allow the judge to dictate distributions in 49 states, except for 1. There's 1 state standing boldly against all of this crazy, and it is the state of Alaska. Now, why Alaska? Honestly, because no one lives there. That's the truth. And I'm going to tell you why it works. I want you to think about this. How many of you heard of Delaware Delaware corporations and Wyoming corporations. Yeah, do you know why these guys went into asset protection? They were itty-bitty states with very little revenue, so they're pulling revenue from other states and business owners by creating entities that are better for you. That's what they're doing. Nevada corporations often have some really good benefits too because they built all of their benefits around their number one revenue source with its casinos. No one has greater liabilities than those people, so those ones are pretty darn good too. But Alaska has one thing nobody else does. In every single state in the United States, even if you go to an attorney, the way they file your operating agreement is through an online system. What they have been using in the court of law is even if you word your operating agreement properly, even if you document everything perfectly, what they have been using in the courts to get through that into a state of dissolution is they come in and say, no one actually reviewed that. That was just an online system. We need the opportunity to review that as a state and see if we actually stand by that. And then they don't, except for Alaska. See, Alaska, they need jobs for people, so they actually are the only state in the nation that still has a real person reading, rubber stamping, lick 'em, stick 'em, mail it. Only Alaska. So why do we do that? Because even in these dissolution cases, Alaska is the only one that is held up against dissolution. Can't do it. So we put an Alaskan organization in there that is the holder of your holding company with an operating agreement that is written that it cannot be dissolved. And it's upheld. And we do that so that they can't be dissolving and piercing corporate veils. We got to be able to protect against that. Okay. So now we've got that. So then that's our fourth strategy, which is the actual language. Now this one is my personal favorite. It's a little irritating at first, but it gets good at the end. Are we ready? We're going to play some offense. There was a law that was passed, and it was supposed to be good. It was a charging order law where they came in and they said, in these lawsuits, people were coming in, and if you were a business owner or you owned a practice, they were coming in and saying, we are suing for your practice. But a group of people, attorneys, came in and said, whoa, 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 whoa. If you sue a CEO of a major corporation, you can't take his job. But you're suing my client and taking his business from him. That's like taking his job. This isn't fair. The courts agreed. So at first it seemed really good, right? You're like, oh good, they're going to protect us as business owners. And then it turned south really fast because they passed something called a pro rata distribution charge, which essentially looks like this. What it does is that it gives the judge control of your entity should they need to take business revenue to pay the claim. So if you go to the court and you lose $1 million settlement, the judge can literally come in and say, I am taking controlling interest of your entity until the plaintiff has been paid in full. And he becomes fully in charge of the distributions of your company. Now here's where it gets really entertaining. Do you know that because he's in charge of the salary, the judge has one law he has to follow? And that is to pay you the median income in your state. Now, if you want to look up something scary, look up the median income in your state. If you really like Spam and ramen noodles, you might make it with that. 1-bedroom apartments, Spam and ramen noodles, and you got to go find a Pinto from the 80s because that's the only car you're driving. And you're not going to be able to get very far because you can't afford the gas. That is what happens when the judge takes over. They do not have to take into consideration your lifestyle, your bills, or your expenses. They have to pay the plaintiff first. I'm going to have you hold that question, but I want to know it. So here's what happens. They take control. They have the charging order. So we came in and said, well, whoa, what's giving them that right? And it is the way operating agreements are written. In all 50 states, the boilerplate operating agreements in those online systems give the judge that right. So we said we're going to rewrite the language of that operating agreement. We're going to say only the general partner has the right to issue a distribution. Now, who was the general partner again? Let me see. Oh, that's right, a company that I own. Okay, that's good. So now he's got to ask my permission, and my answer to that question is no. Do you see what I'm saying? So what happens is and this is real, we've had cases like this, so comes in, you lose, the judge comes in and says there's $1 million settlement. And then he comes in and he says, okay, I want to issue a distribution to the plaintiff. And he looks and he says, oh, I can't issue the distribution. I have to ask the general partner. And the general partner says, no. And the judge can do nothing about this. Nothing. We're just not going to issue a distribution this year. That's it. But then the judge, so then we come back and we're like, yeah, but how long do I have to go without holding on to my distributions? Well, we were curious about that too, but then something happened, okay? Something really beautiful happened, and that is the IRS showed up. And the IRS, they get 40% of these judgments. So the IRS showed up and said, where's the money? And the plaintiff's like, I never got paid. And the IRS is like, well, this isn't going to work. So they issued ruling 77-137. A plaintiff that uses the charging order has to pay income tax on any monetary judgment, even if there is no distribution from the defendant. So the IRS is like, you guys dicker about your operating agreement language all day long. We're going to get paid. So if someone sues you and they win a case for $1 million and you say, let me think about this really hard, no. And then they come back, guess what has to happen? They owe the IRS an obscene amount of money right now, $300,000 to $400,000. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever owed the IRS money. I one time owed the IRS $2.47. It was terrifying. Have you guys ever seen the movie Better Off Dead? Because it felt like that. I want my $2. They hunted me down. They spent more in postage stamps trying to collect that blasted money from me. And by the time I got it to them, I owed them like $47. How does that even work? They have a fascinating system going on over there, which we're going to discuss in a second. But this is where it gets really interesting, you guys, because this is where offense kicks in. If your operating agreements are written this way and somebody decides to sue, the first phone call is to us. Oh, yeah, let me tell you, you wanted to sue our client? Let me just tell you a little bit about this. You can't get to their safe assets. There's 1% on the table. So if you want to calculate that and then decide if it's worth your time, give me a call back. You can't get to their high-risk assets. Well, you could. You can go after this one little pile, but go ahead and do the math. See if it's worth your time. Call me back if it is. You can't pierce or dissolve their entities because you're going to run up against Alaska. Oh, and if you decide to just go through it anyways, you're going to land in a space where your client is going to win a big fat pile of money, and then they're not going to get that big fat pile of money, and then they're going to owe the IRS a big fat pile of money, and then they're going to sue somebody else, and I have a feeling it's going to be you. So we've only, in 15 years of doing this strategy, I've only had one attorney go through and say, nope, I'm going to do it because I'm going to win. This happened last year. He did, in fact, win, and it was a $1.3 million settlement. And our client said, no. And there was a lawsuit against his attorney. The attorney's malpractice had to pay for the settlement and all the legal fees on both sides from the entire court. This is what it looks like to be proactive. I can't tell you, you do this because you don't want to have to deal with the aftermath. You do it ahead of time so that when anything does happen, you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm good, we're good. I've been sued twice in my lifetime after having built 7 different companies. First time I had no protection. And I can only describe it as 9 months of absolute living hell. It's hell. You think about it when you go to sleep, you think about it when you wake up, you think about it when you eat, you think about it when you pee, you think about it when you drive, you think about it all the time, because somebody's trying to take everything that you worked for from you. It's terrifying. The second time I got sued, I had all of this stuff in place. Do you know when they served me my lawsuit? Thanksgiving morning. Why would they do that? Because they know I'm home. Served me my papers Thanksgiving morning. I read it. I put it on my desk. I didn't even think about it again until Monday. I made one phone call. By Wednesday morning, they told me to write a $47 check and put it in the mail. I did that, and I never heard back from them again. All the other side of the attorney wanted was a dismissal letter signed and mailed and processed. That was it. That's the difference between these things, okay? So if we have the right language in the right state with the right owner in the right structure, lawsuits they don't happen. They just can't happen. Okay, so now what? Now what we need to do is we need to put a little layer of estate planning on this, because this is interesting, right? All that entire setup will protect you while you're alive. But the moment you die, the ownership of that dissolves and everything's right back on the table. So we want to do estate planning. Now there's 2 types of estate planning. There's things like irrevocable trusts. But irrevocable trusts, the problem with those is they are irrevocable, and now you can't control it, and they protect your asset even from you. Living trusts simply dictate and direct all of that protected assets that we've already put in place for you. But the cool part about a living trust is the moment you die, it becomes irrevocable. And so it gives you full control of your assets. We protect your assets not with the trust. We protect your assets with asset protection. And then we put the trust in place to organize your affairs and get your estate plan in order. And then when you die, that thing becomes irrevocable, and it's locked in, your family avoids probate, and everything goes as planned. So that's why we use a living trust. It gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you full control while you're living with absolute protection upon death. Okay? My dad didn't have a living trust. My father passed away at 54 years old. He had received his practice from his father. It was a 3-generation family practice. My brother had just finished school and had gone and started working with my dad. He'd been working with him in the practice for 6 months. When my dad contracted an infection from a cut up in his nose that they didn't see or find, he had leukemia, and it killed him within 3 days. It was a tragic loss. We had no idea, and it was terrible. But what made it worse was here's my brother, 6 months out of school, laden with debt, brand new, baby fresh to the practice, just trying to figure his own self out. And now he's got to run the practice without my dad, which was his whole plan, was to run it with my dad. And then my aunts and uncles, my dad's siblings, show up and say, we're going to sell the practice. My brother's like, well, you can't sell the practice. They're like, well, it was our dad's asset before it was yours, and now that he's gone, we think it comes back to us because it was our dad's originally, so now this should be our asset. And they tried to sell the practice right out from underneath my brother, who had to proceed to then go into a process of spending $30,000 to maintain that asset. And it was painful, but maybe the most painful part was the 17 years that it took for him to speak to my aunts and uncles again. It's damning. Like, this is the kind of thing you don't mess with. We see it all the time. Don't mess with it. Like, just get your affairs in order. Really, really important. Now, with these things all in place, the great news is that everything that we just went over, FLPs, LLCs structured properly, holding corporations, S corporations, and estate plans, all of them have innate levels of tax strategy that are a part of them that you have access to when you have the entities. I talk to people all the time. They're like, my accountant, he's terrible. He doesn't save me any money. I'm like, well, what are you giving him to play with here? Because he can't just make something out of nothing. Are you giving him tools? Right? My son, he's got a pile of Legos, but he doesn't like to use those Legos. He likes me to buy a new box every time because he says, Mom, that one has all the parts I need to build what I want to build. So are you handing your accountant some Legos in a box with instructions so you're actually getting what you want, or are you handing him a big old pile of crap and saying, please make something out of this? And how's that working out for you, by the way? My accountant was a good guy, really liked him. And every year I'd be like, I have to be overpaying my taxes. It is excruciating how much money I'm paying in taxes. And he'd say, I'm taking all your deductions. And that's true. They're probably taking all your deductions. Here's the thing they're not doing is tax strategy. Tax strategy is not tax deductions. Tax attorneys are not coming to you and saying, oh, you know what, are you taking a home office deduction? Because you could try that. We're not talking about deductions. Your CPAs are probably all over that. We're talking about strategy. And so when we get into this, I want you to just recognize that strategy is not deductions. Tax strategy is things like using an S corporation for your salary deductions. Does everybody in here recognize that the IRS has a point of which they care? And it's $114,000. Why do they care? Because that is when Social Security stops. If you're paying yourself less than that and you're making a lot of money, they're going to have an issue with that. But if you're paying yourself more than that, you are overpaying your taxes. So there's stop points. You got to know and understand them. Here's the crazy part. Those stop points are in major flux right now. Like, love or hate Trump, we're not going to have a political discussion up here, but let me just tell you what you'd better be doing is having somebody on your team that is paying attention, because there is a crap ton of movement in tax land right now. And if you're not paying attention, you're not doing right now what needs to be done right now for when January comes. There's a lot of savings on the table, and if nobody on your team is paying attention, you're already missing it. There's big movements happening right now. The 280AG one, this one is often called the Augusta Rule because everyone in Augusta, Georgia uses this when the masters come to town, right? And this one, interestingly enough, for those of you who don't know 280AG, it is the ability to pay yourself to rent your own home. Now, how it works is it came out during the Olympics, and they said you can rent your home for 14 days to anybody, and we'll let you collect the income rent-free. They did it because we were about to get egg on our face when we were hosting the Olympics, and foreign guests were come over, and we didn't have enough places for them to stay. So the government came out and said, we're going to give you a tax advantage. If you'll move out of your house for 14 days and let our foreign guests stay there, we'll just let you keep the money. You don't have to pay taxes on it. But that law never went away. It's been in place since the 60s. Just most people don't use it because they're like, well, I don't want to move out of my house for 2 weeks and let some stranger come in and live here. You don't have to, because interestingly enough, the person who can rent that home is your business. So my family has Lewis Family Financial, which includes me, my husband, and my 4 children. Once a month, we have a board meeting where we talk about family finances and their finances, and we do a little financial lesson. We have a monthly meeting minutes that's filed for us. And we use that home, and we pay ourselves every single month for that. Now, the national average for this is $2,000 a month. You can do it 14 times a year. So we pay ourselves $2,000. And for my place, it's based on square footage and location. In my case, I actually get a $4,000 check monthly for this. But it's usually anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, depending on your city and the size of your home. So I write that check for $4,000 4 times a year, or once a month. And then my family has a summer barbecue and a Christmas party. That's 14 times. So I get to write myself those checks, right? So that is a good $64,000 a year in income that I get to take home tax-free. Now, if I'm in a 40% tax bracket, how much money did I just save in taxes? I want you to just think about that. People say, I can't do that because I take a home office deduction. Guys, a home office deduction and 280AG are not the same thing. People say, I can't do that because I'm renting my home. It doesn't say you have to be a homeowner. The law actually says your place of residence. Now, it's only your primary place of residence, so don't get greedy and try to take it on your second home, but it works like a charm. Income shifting for college reminders. This is my favorite. I have 4 kids. I've been doing this since my children. I've been doing this with my kids through this company for 9 years. Been a client for 9 years. Income shifting. Every single month, my children get a paycheck straight from my FLP. They get a distribution every single month. They get up to $14,800 a year, and they don't have to pay taxes on that up until they're 18 years old. Now, this started really young. My son, when he was 4 years old, started working for me. Do you know what your kids can do? Anything that you can go on an app and find services for. Let me tell you what that looks like these days. You can find somebody to water your plants, shred your papers, mow your lawn, walk your dog, do your laundry, pick up your laundry, return your laundry. Fascinating. They have these services. Get your mail, organize your pantry. There are services for everything. And do you know what you can pay your child? The same amount that you could have to pay if you brought in any other help. So I organized my kids, wrote them a quick little job description, and all I had to do was deposit into their accounts every month. And it was awesome because growing up, when it was back to school shopping time, we grabbed the card that had that child's name on it. They bought their own clothes. When it was time to pay soccer fees, we grabbed that card and they paid their own fees. When my daughter was in dance, which is excruciating, by the way, you want to talk about an expense, holy mother of pearl. I could start 7 companies for what I paid for that kid to dance. Her card, she paid for it. Do you know how much money I saved in taxes? Take about $14,800, multiply it by 4. We're getting close to 60 grand. Take 42% of that. That's how much I saved in taxes every single year. So while I paid all the same expenses you did, I just paid for them with money I didn't have to pay taxes on. You guys paid 42% more for the same fees for your kids. Why? Not because your accountant didn't know about deductions, because you weren't employing strategy. Do you see the difference? Now, here's really cool is when they get older, we can't do the $14,800, and people are like, but my kids are all older now, and I missed it. No, you didn't. My kids are older too. My daughter's in college, but guess what? I pay her right now. She's in an advertising program in her university, and I pay her to do marketing for multiple of my companies. Really fun for me because then I pay her out. Do you know how much I pay her? As I calculated how much it would cost me in tuition, housing, books, and fees, because that's what I was going to pay for anyways. Now I pay her that money. She pays her own tuition, housing, books, and fees. And guess what? She has to pay taxes on the money she makes. But do I want her paying 12% on $32,000, or do I want to pay 42% on $32,000 and then still have to send above and beyond that? That's the difference. That's the difference in using income shifting. Really cool. I'm going to get to the bottom here. R&D tax credits. We think research and development tax credits, guys, our average client we're getting our average client back in pocket $50,000 to $100,000 per year. Now, these are our dental clients, so I'm making that specific to you. The reason why is because we have misunderstood R&D tax credits for a good long while. Research and development, we thought it was only for the big wigs, the big pharmaceutical companies. It is not. There are two different types of R&D credits. One of them is also process-driven. If you have a process in your offices, per office, this is based on number of employees, processes in place, and equipment. And our clients are saving a ton of money on R&D tax credits. And we don't usually have this opportunity, but here at our conference today, we actually have the lead member of our tax team is here and available for you guys to talk to, so you guys can talk through all of that with him. All right, now how does it end up working, guys? It looks like this. We normally charge $13,800 to do everything I just laid out for you, to set up your family limited partnership, to lay out your LLCs, to lay out your tax strategy, your holding company, to form your company in Alaska and to act as that registered agent, to build your estate plan, to put the whole thing in place. It's normally $13,800. Right? Because we don't. We have really good intentions, and then we leave here and we don't do things. Like, you need to do this. Because the second reason you need to do it like this is because I can't handle the kinds of conversations that I have to have sometime. I've had 2 of them today where people have come up to me and said, I've got this lawsuit I'm in the middle of. Can you help me? Guys, after the lawsuit has been filed, we can't do this. It's against the law. It's called fraudulent abeyance. And so we can't do it after the fact. And so we have somebody that's like, oh, I was going to do it, but I didn't get it done. Can you still help me? It is painful for me to look you in the eyes and say, no. I could have done it last week, and I cannot do it today. And then here's what gets to happen is instead of paying to have it done, to put the lid on it, to put the wall up, and to move the darn thing so that it can't be getting after anyways, you're going to start to pay $10,000, $12,000, $14,000, and $16,000 a month in attorney's fees while they build you a human shield that can only work so well anyways. I've been there. I have done it. I would literally get on my knees and beg right now if I didn't think that that was a little over the top. Just do it. Like, this is literally one of those things that is, you do it. People are like, well, it seems like a no-brainer. I'm like, yes, that's the point. Like, well, so then if it's a no-brainer, is it also too good to be true? I'm not selling cars up here. I don't have a mustache. You know? For real, though, I'm serious. This is a great product. I'm here because I've been a client with them 9 years. They have saved me almost $250,000 in taxes, and they've saved me from a lawsuit. And for that, I've had the opportunity to pay it forward and be here today. Please come see us at the tables. We would love to talk with you about your situation. We'd love to talk with you about your taxes. And here's the best part of the whole darn deal, guys, is that the way this thing all works, to just put the cherry on top, is we're going to make sure we put our money where our mouth is and guarantee it. You won't pay for this. We guarantee the outcome with our tax savings. If we do not save you more than that $9,800, we have to write you a check for the difference back. And that way we remove and mitigate all of your risk. So we have to save you. We know you only got 2 days here with us, and so instead we said we're going to take all the risk away, and we will pay you back if we don't save you the money. So that's a pretty fair business move, yeah? Good. Okay, come see us at the table. We'll talk you through it, and we'll make sure that you know what your situation is and how we can help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Madeline. You guys kind of see the difference when someone like specializes in something, right? It's just a different level of conversation. They are down this hall and just to the left, right? Okay, but that's not where you're going to go right now. You'll go there later, but you're not going to go there right now. Where you're going to go is back to the main room. I'm giving you 15 minutes, okay? So you can run to the restroom real quick and then make it over there. And then we're going to go ahead. We're not going to do our TikTok right yet, okay? So those who are nervous about it, just get over there. And then we are going to do our breakouts. You'll have time to like move because it's after lunch, right? So you'll have time to move and so forth. So make your way back to the main room. Awesome. Thank you so much.